Truth is the first casualty in the clamor for attention. So I apologize for not doing a show for the last couple of days, but we've had power failures here in Silicon Valley, and for some reason our systems are not very hardened. I can't imagine what it's going to be like when more and more electric vehicles are out there on the road, because we're having trouble supporting the grid that we have today. But that's the topic of another show. Today I want to talk a little bit about truth. I want to talk a bit about truth. I want to talk a bit about attention. And I want to talk a bit about the noise that's out there. Now, if you've been watching my show for a while, if you've been listening to my show for a while, you'll realize that I talked about this a long, long time ago. That what you need when you're running a business, when you're starting a business, when you have a startup, or even just as a regular human being, we've entered into a new world where the most important part about starting a business, or actually being somebody in the world today, is the size of your audience, is the quality of your audience. It's the amount of attention that you get. And I said this a long time ago. I don't remember exactly what it was. It might have been 2015. It might have been nearly 10 years ago, where I said that when you're running a startup, it used to be that the most important thing was solving the problem that your customers had, was to be able to figure out what problem you were trying to solve, and then solving it and doing it in such a way that it increased the value for your customers and was profitable for you, and was also connected to your passions, right? It was the trifecta of startups. It lined up with your passions. You were really good at it, and there was a demand for it, and you could get paid for it. That used to be how startups operated. It used to be that you needed to have the product first. You needed to figure out what people wanted, build it, get it out there, and then promote it. And that was when we were in a much less clamorous environment. We're in a completely different environment today. We're in a completely different environment today where the amount of clamor there is for attention is staggering. It's absolutely staggering. Not just attention for your product or service, but just attention in general. There's so much noise out there. There's so much information out there. And AI, bless its little heart, has made things worse, because we're just churning out tons and tons of more stuff that the search engines have to go through to decide if it's relevant or not. I'm not saying AI is not generating relevant stuff. I generate a lot of relevant stuff through AI, especially AI Daily and some of my other websites. So I'm not saying that AI doesn't generate relevant stuff, but there's just more and more out there. And we went from a time when there was hardly any content out there to a reasonable amount of content out there, to now hordes and hordes, staggering amounts of content, which the systems are finding impossible to sort through. So what happens? It becomes less and less easy to build an audience. It's almost impossible to build an audience nowadays. And that's where the flip has occurred. It's now much more important to have an audience for your product before the product itself. For example, let's say you had a certain budget to build. Let's say you're a startup founder and you think you got $1 million, right? I'm going to spend maybe, 3/4 of it building the product and 1/4 of it promoting the product, building an audience around the product. That's flipped. It's the other way around. The easy part is building the product. The cheap part is building the product, getting the word out about the product, building an audience around the product, building your customer base around the product, marketing, selling it, pitching it, getting on all the social medias, pushing it to your customers, to your prospects and customers. That's the hard part. So what's happened? In the clamor for attention, everything has gone out the window. Relevance has gone out the window. Truth has gone out the window. It's not a day goes by that I don't see these ridiculously extravagant claims out there on Twitter and Twitter, Facebook, Google, YouTube, everywhere. saying how they're going to be able to do this and do that. Ridiculously exaggerated claims with no truth behind them. Or what is the truth behind them? Is there any truth behind them? The clamoring for attention is so strong, it's almost an impossible hill to climb. Which is why a lot of people are just basically throwing in the towel and saying, we're in the post-truth era. Nobody can prove if this is true or not. So I'm going to say I make $1 million a month with this product. I make $10 million a month. I make $100 million a month with this product. The claims are just getting more and more outlandish. So truth has become a casualty in the clamor for attention. And the sad part about it is that I think the biggest reason why this is all happening is mostly the social networks and the search engines, is that they're the arbiters of relevancy. They're the ones who should be giving us what we're looking for. But they're just jumping in on the same bandwagon, expecting people to clamor more and more and more, dance more and more for the machines, for their message to get out. It's becoming almost impossible for a startup founder to be heard. It's almost getting impossible for a human being to be heard in all the clamor, which is why the claims are more extravagant, the actions are more extravagant, the videos are more extravagant. Everything is just going over the top to try and clamor for attention. And in the end, the clamor for attention is the new pandemic. I don't have a solution for you, but if you ask me, it's something that a startup founder should be thinking about. How do we get around this? How do we get back to substance as opposed to clamoring for attention? That's it for me for today. See you next time, and until then, don't forget to think future.